stuff. Okay. Hello, David.
Hello, Solomon. Hello, Ose. Welcome to the platform.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Obviously, you're not a stranger to TNN and what we kind of do, so it's really good to have you today on a one-to-one basis, as opposed to where we've, like David was saying earlier on, as opposed to where we're all locked up in a room and there's 50 odd people all exchanging ideas, and then you find your own space and drop your own nuggets. But today is full on with you, Ose Anenih, and like I said, it's amazing to have you because I've known you as a friend, and I've followed you as a leader on different platforms. But most importantly, from my point of view, I have kind of admired your engagement style, which is what has led to us wanting to have this conversation with you. So the overarching Nigeria in diaspora and at home can see the kind of values that you push forward. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing, David, you're nodding your head in alignment. So
Absolutely. Like I was saying before you started recording, I listened to the podcast we did. I think it's almost a year now we did that podcast.
Exactly, yeah.
And
funny enough,
Ose made a serious impact on me. You know, some of the things he said about our politics, some of the things he said about our youth was very, very profound to me. And I've been studying the political plane ever since that podcast, you know, and trying to use your words as a yardstick. So thank you for having our time again. Thank you for giving us this 1 hour. We hope at the end of it, as usual, whoever is listening, get the value of your qualities.
Excellent. Amen. That's the good one. Okay, well, I'll say we normally, like you say, it's not an interview, please. Yeah, it's really just a conversation and centered around value. The key thing is we would want to obviously get the audience to know a little bit more about you. Stuff like, you know, who you are, you know, what you are and what you do. But in this case, particularly around growing up in Nigeria. So who you are, what you do, and then growing up in Nigeria. And then we can go into, you know, certain topics that we already kind of have in common with.
Okay, so thanks again, guys, for having me. I watched the previous interview you had with the Alhaji Zaria, I think it was.
Right.
And it intimidated me, you know, the depth of conversation you guys had. So I started having a serious case of imposter syndrome. I hope I can live up to that, the bar you guys set in your last interview.
Okay.
But you know, growing up, I as you know, my dad is Chief Anenih, and I think growing up, we sort of struggled with the perception of the man and expectations of I think what people thought, you know, a big man's child is supposed to act or behave. But a lot of people did not know that he was a very strict disciplinarian. You would be up at the crack of dawn, you would go to school, you had to be home at a certain time, you weren't allowed to play out. It was almost like being in a military barracks growing up. And then of course we had the period around 1983 where he was then locked up by our dear President Buhari in his first incantation as a military head of state. And that was really disruptive. My dad had a couple of wives at the time. And so we were sent off to live with my grandmom when he was locked up. You know, so it sort of allowed me, because my mom is Igbo. Right. So I sort of had this deep and very, very sudden indoctrination as an Igbo child. You know, he would speak Igbo in the house, it was Igbo culture, it was Igbo food, it was Igbo values. And then when he came back, when he was let out from prison, when Buhari was excused. You then went back into the regular routine programming of the disciplinarian father,
right,
who was, I think, generous to a fault to his time, to politics, and to other people. And I think that sort of like shaped me personally growing up.
right.
So he was in his own way. I think it was maybe because of his generation. The way they expressed affection was slightly different from the way you and I would today, Solomon.
I totally agree. Yeah.
And so to me personally, I don't know for you, I sort of find myself now defining myself, I think first and foremost, not as a politician or as a PDP person or any of my achievements, but as a father.
Right.
It's how I start off with defining myself. I'm a dad.
Right.
And everything I do, even my politics, sort of stems from, looking at my kids and saying, what type of life do I want to give them? What type of country do I want to leave?
Excellent.
For them? One of the things my dad was big on was education. All of us had to go to school. All of us had to get master's degrees. It killed him that none of his kids, I think none of us actually had a PhD. My sister started, but her real love was interior design.
Right.
And I think he cried. He literally cried when she told him, like she had finished the coursework,
right,
and she was supposed to hand in her thesis.
Right.
She was doing something in the petroleum sector. And she said, I don't want to do this. So she ditched her PhD to become an interior designer. She's amazing at it, but I think it broke his heart. Yeah. So in a nutshell, that sort of was what formed me. The discipline from my dad, the focus on education, and just I think for me watching as a child, watching out the way he would always have time for people and people's problems.
Right.
Our house was always open, never locked the doors. People would always come in, and he would always have their time. And I think those things sort of like shaped me and molded me into the person I am today.
Well, to be fair, that story is a little bit emotional because everybody kind of knows your dad on different levels. You hit the nail on the head. We don't know the guy who does all the discipline, but we kind of know the politician out there. But I'm fortunate enough to know that side of him as well, from the discipline point of view. And then obviously being a good friend of you, but growing up in Nigeria per se, like you hinted, I didn't know about you growing up, on the Igbo side of things and having that culture kind of like given to you to really appreciate. I will put it that way. I would like to know a little bit more about how you saw Nigeria then, while you were growing up, and then obviously in a direct relation to what it is now, or how or where it's going now. I'm guessing there are two different dimensions that play here, but it would be good if you let us know if it was the Nigeria that gave you hope while you were growing up, because I assume while you were growing up as a child, Nigeria was quite interesting, let's put it that way. And that interest is what we want to capture from its value. So, yeah.
That's a brilliant question. I think growing up, Solomon, we were sheltered, I think. In Benin, this is not just me, in Benin, growing up, it was about football, it was about games, it was about Nintendo and Mario. We lived very, very sheltered lives. So to the point where I think in secondary school, my mom sent me to Lumen Christi because she didn't feel she felt, the life we were living was sort of like so sheltered,
right?
That she wanted us to learn the language. She wanted us to, know people more than the people in our streets and that area,
Yeah.
So she sent me out to Lumen Christi.
Which is in Uromi, right? So
Uromi, yeah, in Uromi.
Yeah.
And then after that, I actually went across the country to Zaria. I schooled in Ahmadu Bello University.
Okay.
Again, because they wanted us to get that, I think, experience of the wider country. And it wasn't from, I think it was because at the time, everyone felt there was a country that was working. There was a country that was sort of like on an upward trajectory.
Yep.
And the context of this was during the military.
Right.
So I was in ABU, I think, in 92.
Right.
So this was smack bang during military rule.
Right.
But people still felt safe enough and comfortable enough to send their children across the country, send their kids into boarding houses. Even as tough as things were back then, there was still a sense, I think, of a shared Nigerian identity. Whether you were Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, it wasn't as toxic, I think, as it has become today. I would never send my kids to school in Zaria today, just because of the way the country has become. Just because I know that people can storm the universities or schools and abduct them, and I don't travel by road. I hardly travel by train because the trains are always breaking down. In my day job now, I sort of I have a construction company with Ira, my brother.
Right.
And there was this project we had designed for Abuja. It was a 40-room hotel.
Right.
And the guy had bought a plot of land. We had designed it. And we designed this about maybe 2 years ago. And he just kept stalling until he said, you know what? He's from Edo State. He said, "Oh, sir, I can't put my money in Abuja." I was like, "So what do you mean? We've done the feasibility. It's Lagos, is Abuja, it's Port Harcourt. If you want to run this as a business, it has to be in Abuja."
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, sir, I can't put my money in Abuja. They can wake up one day and drive me away from here."
Oh, wow.
So we had to take this project to Edo State. I said, "Okay, let's put it in Benin. It can work in Benin."
Right.
He said, "Oh, sir, I'm putting it in Epoma. I'm putting it in my village."
Right. I can imagine, yeah.
Because the country has become so I think people have become so unsure of what direction this country is headed that everybody is hedging their bets. Everybody is, sort of like withdrawing into the safety of your ethnic or geographic identity.
Right.
Nobody's investing in North because of the insecurity. You hear conversations, even in the East now with insecurity, people are wondering what's going on there. If you know Benin now, you literally cannot travel between Benin and Uromi now. That stretch of land, that stretch of road, it's about 45 minutes, an hour, without praying or without going in a convoy of vehicles. I wanted to go by Big Joe one time, and they said I should. So my people were telling me, don't travel between 8 a.m. and 11 because that's when the kidnappers operate. And I'm like, imagine in the UK, for instance, they'll say don't travel around the M5 between 4 and 7 because robbers might abduct you. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So I worry about it. I really, really worry about the direction this country is headed. And it almost feels like, the twilight zone, like, you talk about growing up in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And those memories and that experience, it's totally different from experiences of kids growing up in Nigeria today.
It's true. And I think that's a very key point, David. If we always have this conversation. I think, David, even one time, I remember you did something where a lot of people came back to David. He said, look, growing up in Nigeria, the contrast is too big. I can't really remember the example you used, David, but you were hinting at what Ose is hinting at now, which is our lives growing up is completely different from the average Nigerian child now. It makes you worry. It makes you scared. Sometimes these things we are hearing, they're new to us because we didn't experience any of it. The worst we had growing up was there was the bomber thing that this guy would steal children and all that. But that was said to make us not go out, not necessarily because it was rampant. It was because when your mom wants you to stay at home, she would be like, one guy is gonna catch you and put you in his agbada and run away. Those are like fairy tale stories. They weren't realities, but now they're becoming realities. And I suppose during the podcast we would touch on things with regards to leadership and how we can start looking at these things in terms of giving back or making things better. But you did mention on education, which I know you are really, really big on education. One of the things I said earlier is my admiration for you is how you engage with people both online and offline, and it's purely from an intellectual and educational point of view. It begs us to say, can we talk about education in Nigeria? I mean, how do you see it? What is it? Or what is your expectation from it? I'm just throwing those three things in the air, and whatever lands, whatever you're comfortable with, let's pick it up from there and have a talk about education in Nigeria amongst ourselves, and then we can see.
Yes, Ose, Solomon has made a good point, but listening to you, I'm intrigued. You are what we call a diversified Nigeria. You have Edo heritage, you have Igbo heritage, you schooled in Zaria, which is in the north.
Yeah.
Now, relating this to what Solomon has thrown in the air, education, what impact did that side of you?
Yeah.
What impact did, or impressions did you get from your Igbo diversification and then your Zaria relationships with people who you went to school with? What impact did they have on you, and how did they mold you into the kind of person you are now, which makes you think a lot about education?
Yep.
I think for a lot of us growing up, and again, I will have to pivot back to recognize that there's a difference between our education growing up and our outcomes, and what's the current situation.
Yeah,
I think growing up we had sort of like the best. Definitely compared to what's going on now, we had a really, really good standard of primary and secondary school education. And I recall, it was funny. I recall after finishing from Lumen Christi, it was a missionary school.
Yeah.
And then I finished from ABU. I recall thinking that everything I needed to learn in life, my education, my formal education, I had actually acquired it by the time I was graduating from Lumen Christi.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I didn't leave ABU with an education outside networking, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Outside building relationships, outside learning how to, negotiate your way through society, because university was sort of like a microcosm of the wider society.
So basically that system worked at that point in time.
It did. Yeah. And there was also the important thing that growing up, we sort of were, it was drummed and drilled into us that, education was important in determining how you would end up in life. You wanted, if you didn't go to school, you would live in penury. If you went to school, you would have chances of becoming a lawyer, a doctor, a pilot, an engineer, whatever. And you could see it, in society then, the stars of society were, your people in Shell, were your star lawyers. It was Gani Fayemi and all those guys. It was people who had solid educational backgrounds, and I think that sort of changed. And I'm not talking about the quality of the education per se. I'm talking just about the way society started treating education or educational
right.
degrees. So you started seeing a focus, and maybe the point, if we were to pick a point, it would probably be 1999. We started seeing society celebrate politicians, and less so doctors and lawyers, because it was politicians that you were seeing on television. They were the ones with access to money and resources. And then, you sort of like young people model their behavior on what they see on wider society.
Right.
And also, if your role models stop being your engineers and your lawyers and your doctors and start being politicians, who had nothing before they went into public office, who are less educated than you, are less articulate, have no vision for society, but just because of the status that society or political society grants them, they become demigods.
Right.
People started aspiring to political office not to serve, but as careers, as platforms to shine. They became the new celebrities.
Okay.
And closely allied with that, when we started celebrating wealth and the wealth that politicians were celebrating, you started then seeing people look to make quick money. I'll tell you something. So we're building this hotel in Ekpoma now, right?
Right.
And I was moaning to someone, that it doesn't make any sense to me. The feasibility says this hotel will fail. And he was like, no, Ekpoma is, there's 419 boys everywhere. They will patronize your hotel.
Oh, wow.
You guys will be fine. All the hotels in Ekpoma, in Uromi, in Edo, 419 boys full up. They have money to spend. So, don't worry about it.
Wow.
And I was, thinking like, so how are you going to build a business based on patronage from fraudsters?
Fraud.
Yeah. Like literally, how can that be your business model? And it's not an Ekpoma thing. It's not an Edo thing. It's a societal thing. How can that be your business model, or how can that society prosper or thrive?
Well, do you find that disappointing from an educational point of view? Like, okay, obviously growing up, like you said, you got everything you wanted from the system, which is a credit to the system at that point in time. So aligning it with what you're doing now, you've done what you're doing. You're a businessman. You're looking at ways you can affect leadership, and then you were hearing all these stories. Do you sometimes reflect to when you were being educated? Did you have this kind of thoughts? Did you ever think you would meet this kind of alignment where you're doing something and there's a potential that is criminals who are going to be patronizing you? Did you ever get to that kind of reckoning in your early days? I'm guessing not. Because, it's interesting you bring back the secondary school days, because that's one thing I know about you when it comes to critical thinking. And I'm not just saying that because we know each other on a level. Is I know you think very, very deep. I know you know how to analyze things. So you must have had this snippet, or you must have had this projection when you were young that, hey, look, you're going to do something for the masses, but not for criminals. So did you meet that disappointment when this business kicked off?
So, I'm still, we're laughing about it, but I'm still in shock.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm still in shock. I don't know how we pull back from it when you have, I'm talking about a hotel now. When you have, there's this soap, there's this traditional thing.
Yeah.
You're pricing it on the side of the road, and you're in the village, and you want to buy it. And the seller telling you, if you don't buy it, these G boys will buy it, Wow. And I'm like, how do you... We have a serious problem. Sometimes it's easy. I'm a politician. I belong to PDP, and right. It's easy and convenient to say it's APC that's a problem in Nigeria, or it's Buhari. But honestly, it's not. We have systemic failures going on all over the country, in our communities, in our towns, in our states. It's not Buhari, and I honestly don't know how we address it. Well,
I would look at it this way, if I interject a little bit, right? You see, you've highlighted what Nigeria can really become if we focus on education. I mean, you're a product of the Nigerian educational system, along with many people like you, many people we've spoken to on here. They are products of that system. So you know the system works. I am a product of that system. You know, David is. A lot of the people I see here are. But the thing, you just highlighted that we have a problem in Nigeria, which I think leads us to a key conversation in this podcast, which is why grassroots politics in Nigeria is key. I remember around last year when you were on these programs with us, that was one subject that was really passionate with you, and you really ramped a few nuggets home with the view of pushing grassroots politics. But from a strategic point of view now, how would that solve a problem for Nigeria?
Sorry, Ose and Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to a premise that will help enhance this conversation. A few weeks ago, we were opportune to speak with a prominent PDP person from Kaduna State, Alhaji Shuaibu Mekati. In our conversation, he made a statement that impacted on me. He said, we let our third or fourth 11 take the reins of politics. And that is why we find ourselves where we are now.
Mm.
So using that as a yardstick,
Okay.
how do we position the grassroots? Like Solomon has said, how do we now reclaim the grassroots, or how do we try and position the grassroots into a mindset of the first 11 rather than the fourth 11?
Yeah.
Okay, so so I try to be very pragmatic. My PDP guys don't like me when I say that. So first of all, let's agree that our politics is broken. And if we agree our politics is broken, you have PDP governors, you have that came out of this broken political system. You have APC governors. So it's not a PDP APC thing. It's just our politics. And Alhaji Shuaibu is absolutely correct when he says we let our first and second 11 and third 11 sit on the bench, and we're fielding it's burning in relegations. We're feeling burning. You know, instead of playing in the Premier League, you're bringing Portsmouth Town or whatever to come and represent you in Champions League. That's literally what we are doing, and it's. I think because we sort of have stayed away. You know, we bought this myth that just like the bomb of myth Solomon referred to. If you go outside, bomb will catch you. You know, so you stay in, and then they tell you, politics is dirty, full with the worst of the worst, and then you stay away as a result of it.
Right.
All you do is just allow them capture the states. They've captured the politics, and politics is literally how you push the levers of governance.
Right.
If an illiterate uses politics to get into power, his policies are going to be ignorant policies. So we fail to recognize that there's first of all a direct relationship between societal outcomes and the nature or the quality of our political process, not just the elective process, but just politics in general.
Right.
And so what we try to, because it's a problem I have wrestled with, and what we try to do, like I recognize that, for instance, Solomon, you are. There was something my dad told me one time. So we sat down and I told him I want to get involved in politics, and he asked me why, and I was like, politics is broken. These are the things I could do. These are the things we could fix. That's really cool. That's really nice. But if he's going to give me any advice, you have to be a wolf. You have to be sheep in wolf's clothing. You can't let them know this is what you want to do, because If you let them know this is what you want to do, they won't let you in. Because it's, for a lot of people, it literally is the only thing they know how to do. It's their source of livelihood. They don't have any other way of living. And so I thought we needed to find a pragmatic way of trying to get into the system. So forget about executive office.
Right.
So I'm not going for executive office. I'm going for the House of Reps.
Okay.
I'm going for state houses of assembly. I'll tell you. So for instance, in my constituency, it's East and North East and East and South East. We have about 21 wards. There are 8 delegates. So there's 5 exco and then 3 ad hoc delegates, so 8. So it comes up to about 168 delegates that will take part, at least in my primaries. Let's say you need about 100 to win. Let's say I want about 100. PDP primaries, at the last election, I think delegates got about 200,000 naira each. So if you want 100 delegates, right? Wow. 200,000, you already know how much you're looking at spending at least just to secure their votes. Now, I'm not talking about a conversation around your manifesto. Yeah. I'm not talking about, comparing you against what the other guy has done. Mm-hmm. I'm just talking about straight out, if you want to buy this thing, this is what you're going to have to do.
Right.
I've been in ECPOMA. I just came back into Abuja a couple of weeks ago. So I've been in ECPOMA for a long time, and in Edo State and in Uromi, because of my project and politics.
Right.
And I've met every single leader. I've met everybody.
Even on the grassroots level as well.
On the grassroots level, at the state level, I've met every single person.
Okay.
Not one person, I still cannot believe it. Not one person has asked me, why are you running?
Oh, wow. Okay, I see what you mean.
Not one person has asked me,
yeah,
if you win, how will you change my life?
Right.
Not one person.
Right.
It's okay, no problem. Oh, zoning, let's look at the zoning. Who is there? Who is not there? What are the numbers? And when you don't have conversations around why you want to run. So that's just me, for instance, and I assume it's going to be for everybody else. Yeah. So when you have a conversation around, do you have the money to win? Yeah. Do you have the delegates? Do you know, have you spoken to this leader? And nobody is actually talking about, these are the problems in Uromi. These are the problems in Ubiaja. Yeah. How can you help fix them? When you eventually get into office, why would you feel any reason to address those problems? Because it wasn't part of the conversation when you were campaigning.
Yeah.
It wasn't part of the negotiation when you got the PDP ticket or APC ticket or whatever. So I tell people, young people who want to run for State House of Assembly,
right?
Forget PDP and APC. If you have 20 million naira, you have 50 million naira. Instead of wasting it in PDP, instead of, because you might spend that money and you won't get the ticket, go and run on YPP. Go and campaign on people. Go and try to get. Now, speaking of not the delegates, go and speak to the community, to the people who are going to vote. Go and start pushing your voter registration drive. Forget the captured voters that PDP already have and APC already have. Because I have seen there are senatorial elections, the last Lekki election, the last senatorial election that happened in Lagos, around that Lekki constituency, had 5% voter turnout. 5%. So imagine if you were a serious third force candidate and you had put in the groundwork 2 years before the election, and you had 120,000 people who were going to not just vote for you, but were campaigning and making noise, you would have won that election.
Yeah.
But we sort of look at APC and PDP, and everyone focuses on those parties And, we're capitalists now. When there's a demand, or where there's demand, the prices, go up.
But would it not be up to guys like you to start pushing why the grassroots is really key? Because you just said now, the key thing that is failing from what you said is the why. We have to start with why in politics. If someone is running, you ask them why. If you want to run, you ask yourself why. If you don't really start with the why, then there's a problem, because the why will obviously expose the intent. If you're genuine about stuff, So,
if I come in there and because, like we said, it's a conversation. I'm looking at it as if only 5% of the electorate in that constituency vote, does that mean it is now a politics of fear rather than rather than how it should be, where everybody is free to make their minds up to choose who they want to choose? Has it become a politics of fear and a politics of money? And if it has, how do we? Because at the end of the day, it is not just you, Ose. It is everybody in Nigeria, in diaspora. And this is why we're having the conversation. This is why TNN is pushing the conversation. So that at the end of the day, how do we all arrive at changing this particular situation for the good of the nation?
It's not fear. I think it's apathy. So I got some, so two things. I'll talk about this apathy thing first, and I'll talk about what we can do about it. So I spoke about the Lekki senatorial by-election, and I talked about 5%. And you would have thought with what happened, this was the Lekki tollgate shooting. I think happened in October. This election happened in December. So in that same constituency, APC won, and it blew my mind. Like an APC president rolled out the military to kill Nigerians from that constituency, and APC was a month and a half later able to win an election in that constituency. It's not fear. I think it's people have lost interest in the process because they feel this process is rigged. But it isn't. That's the unfortunately, that's the truth. A smoke screen they put out to keep you away. So I'll give you another example. There's another by-election that happened in, I think it was in Bauchi, one of these northern states. So this guy, he died. I don't know him. I don't know about him. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what he represented.
Right.
But his son said he was going to contest. And his son said, he started pulling on people's heartstrings. I want to complete the journey my father started. Yeah. And his son was, it wasn't on APC or PDP. It wasn't on any of the major parties. His son was knocking on every single door in that community. My name is Usman, or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
I am Alhaji Hassan's son. I want to complete his mandate. I'm running on YPP. Election is on Saturday. Please come out and vote for me.
Right.
Voter turnout was about 60-something% in that community. And the guy won.
Right.
Because he didn't make it about politicians. He didn't make it about PDP or APC.
Right.
He gave people a reason to come out and support him. So there was a face that they could identify. There was a cause that mobilized them to come out and vote and defend their votes. When you look at, things like what happened in Lagos, you can still point at these isolated spots. One of the larger ones was Edo State, for instance, where PDP had no business winning that election, to be honest. We did zero work. We were just lucky that the governor had problems in APC. We were just lucky that the governor came over. And even then, I think he would have lost if it didn't become an election between the Edo State people
And the
versus.
right.
It was that's what the election was about.
Yeah,
It was about Edo State people asking themselves, do we want Oshomole to be our Oga?
Okay. All right.
And so Edo State people came out and said, no, we don't want that. I have countless videos of voters, not PDP agents, voters catching APC agents who had money and wanted to buy votes,
Right.
and rejecting the votes and handing them over to the police. So you can point. I think when you frame an election around a message that energizes people, you sort of address these issues that we are talking about, and it's why these local elections, I think, are important. With the you have behind you, a reason why you're running,
Yep.
and you're able to go out
Yep.
and communicate to your people, to the people in your community, not your godfathers, not your leaders, not your elders, to the people in the community. This is why I'm running. This problem, if you elect me, I can help fix it. And Mama Bomboy and Papa Emeka, and they know you. It's a lot easier, especially with this smaller election, the state houses of assembly, the councillorship, the local government chairman. It's a lot easier to make an impact, to resonate with people. And I'm not naive enough to say that I don't think there'll ever come a time where money will not play a role. That you will still have to mobilize and campaign and get your polling agents into their polling units to make sure that there's no hanky-panky. So what we've tried to do is we've set up this organization called, I helped set up, I'm not running it, called the Nigerian Alliance. And all they do is focus on legislative office elections.
Is this a grassroots kind of thing?
Yeah, grassroots, pure grassroots.
Right.
So they crowdsource funding for you, they raise funding for you, they teach you on how to campaign, the language to use, they help shape messaging for you, do your ads, banners, posters. They literally hold your hand and walk you through. I think they have a couple of pillars, obviously, you have to sign up to. They're not going to, if the devil is running for legislative office, they're not going to support the devil. Right. So it's freedom of speech, respect for sanctity of life, a free press, a living wage, stuff like that. Healthcare, you have to push for universal healthcare, universal education. And if you sign up to those things and commit that when you get into legislative office, because they have draft bills ready already, when you get into legislative office, you will push these bills.
All right.
Then they will support your campaign, and hopefully start fixing from the inside out the problem that's kind of like bedevil Nigeria today.
So in essence, the change is already taking place. Please, Ose, amplify this to our audience, because the audience in diaspora, you see, from interaction, there are quite a few Nigerians in diaspora who want to come home, who want to get into this grassroots politics, who want to help in building up again. So without this conversation, they would not know about this alliance you're talking about.
Yeah, or similar structures like this.
Or the structures already taking place. So if you highlight that a bit more, so they can hear it, so they can understand it, and let them know how to key into it. Yeah. That will be highly appreciated.
Honestly, that's really crucial, because listening to that particularly, I think that's one of the main values, if I'm correct.
That's value, 100%.
The whole thing is centered around value. And so if we know from a grassroots level that there are structures in place that have bills, right? These bills, if you come in, you will, obviously be supported, but you're accountable to drive these bills because they are beneficial to the people, and then they preserve kind of like accountability as well. But
Yes, it
it's still
starts
better
being
if you tell us how it works. So I don't know how it works, but you give us more
it,
insight,
it,
just a little bit
it
into how it works systematically.
yeah, it's starting to be now politics of accountability, which is to the birth of a new thing for our politics, could lead to the growth of our nation again.
Yeah, definitely. I think when people started realizing that, citizens and civil society could actually make a difference. Um, it's happened before in Nigeria's history, but in modern times, I think what happened at NSAS and the way these young people sort of like grabbed the attention of everyone, of the political class, of government, of the international community, of their parents, of everyone. I think people started realizing that, hang on, if we organize in a coherent way, we can actually start making real difference. Again, I don't, you guys are sounding a little bit too excited for my liking. It's realistically, it's a long process. Nigeria is not going to change in 2023. But at least we can try to stop the decline.
I'll tell you why the excitement is real, because we've been having these conversations for a year. Remember when we were talking about this a year ago, we were hinting on grassroots politics. What's up with grassroots politics? What is going on? A lot of people gave their views about grassroots politics, right? We talked about education in politics. A lot of people gave their views. But in all that conversation that we had over 365 days, nobody spoke about this structure that you've mentioned. So the excitement is real. So excuse us if we're excited, because we have not heard this before. Even if it's going to take 20 years to achieve it, there's always a starting point, which is the why. So why is this thing in place? It's to help with the mindset change. And no one said it's going to be a fast thing. It's going to evolve. It's going to grow. It's going to be a seed that needs to be watered, especially for the young ones. So if there's a young person who's 14-year-old now, or let's say 15, listening to this, in 10 years' time, that guy is going to be 25. If that thing hasn't fully aligned, it's still growing. In another 10 years, that guy will be 30-something, more than ready to lead a community. But the idea was birthed 20 years ago, for that guy in 20 years' time. So it's not something that we would say, let's be frivolous about it. The key thing is what we're doing is timeless. We park this somewhere as a podcast now. Another person jumps on it and says, well, that thing also said, do you guys have this kind of structures in your community? They'll be like, no, let's just put it here for the people who want it. It could be the diaspora people who want to hear about it. It could be the people on board who want to hear about how to key into grassroots politics. I think that's essential. And I think that's one of the things that you consciously or subconsciously kind of personify from our point of view. And
I want to commend you about that. I'm dying to commend you. It's a brilliant initiative which you are part of. And for that, we are well impressed with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. It's early days. Nigeria disappoints me. I think maybe my enthusiasm has been dampened by what happened recently in the National Assembly.
I can imagine.
But yeah, thank you. It's good to see this, the enthusiasm reflected back.
You see, one of our key questions for you, permitting time, is the hope that you have for a new political structure. That was the question I was going to put forward to you, and you kind of answered that question. You've answered it already, and obviously we want to know more. So it takes us to looking ahead with what you've said now. What is your view? What is looking ahead like from your point of view? That's what we read. That's the excitement that we're here to capture, looking ahead, because obviously you've got hopes, you've got dreams, you've got leadership aspirations, but what is looking ahead, in your book? What does that mean? What does that signify? And what does that give back to the society?
So looking ahead, again, I'll try and paint two scenarios, two scenarios that could easily be Nigeria's future. So Nigeria could very easily become Borno, where you have insecurity on a level that it becomes organized insecurity, where you have terrorists and warlords governing spaces like is happening in Borno, and imposing taxes and adjudicating citizen disputes, community disputes. That could very easily become one vision of Nigeria. You see Boko Haram in the northeast, you see the bandits in the northwest, you are seeing insecurity in the southeast, you are seeing insecurity or the threat of insecurity coming up again in the south, you are seeing agitation in the southwest.
Yeah.
Very, very easily, if we don't check this slide, we could become Borno. But we could just as easily become Oyo State, where when I speak about investments now in Nigeria and I speak to people who want to build hotels or whatever, I say, you can invest in Lagos, you can invest in Port Harcourt, you can invest in Abuja, you can invest in Oyo State. And the only difference between an Oyo State and an Ogun or an Ekiti or Osun is the quality of leadership in Oyo State. It's Shea Makinde is one guy, and he hasn't done anything fantastic. They don't use air taxis in Oyo State right now. But every time there has been a crisis, because of the quality of leadership he represents, when Fulani herders kill, or when herders kill people in Oyo State,
right,
and there's this outrage, and you feel the state, they want to drive out everyone that's Fulani. And the governor comes out and says, that cannot happen because I am governor of everybody in the state. We are not a Yoruba state. We're a Nigerian state. We are Oyo State, and everybody is welcome. I swore an oath to protect every single person in this state.
Right.
And when you see a governor say, on the June 12th, when there was a June 12th protest recently, when you see the governor come out and say, I support your rights to protest.
Of course.
I am going to be here with you to make that security doesn't shoot at you, because if I'm here, they're not going to shoot at you. And you literally march with these guys to give them a shield. You allow them protest, and you recognize their rights and you recognize their grievances. And when you see, someone being very intentional about, building a sense of hope in governance and trying to rebuild trust between the governed and the governor, it literally is transformational, and that could, if you look at Oyo State and what's happening in Oyo State, even with the problems, it shows you that if you start putting in these leaders in your state houses of assembly, in your state, in your national assembly, in your presidency, whatever, if you start putting in leaders that understand just the basics, it's not, like I said, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
Understand that people have a right to protest. Understand things like freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Understand that you don't gag the press.
Yeah.
Understand that, if you're in a convoy, your aid shouldn't be shooting people and running them off the road. Just little things.
Yeah.
It literally transforms society. And, if I have any hope, it's that people are starting to realize that, that it matters. It matters who you put into public office.
That's it.
Because it affects your life in really, really intimate ways. We thought before it was far away, whatever your governors or politicians are doing doesn't affect you, but it does. It's why you don't have healthcare. It's why you don't have an emergency service. It's why your roads aren't working. It's why there's insecurity everywhere. It's why your states aren't governed. It matters. And if there's any positive from the apparent failure of Nigerian states, is that people are now realizing that, one way to fix it is through fixing our politics.
And that aligns with grassroots being key in all this.
Definitely.
Because from that grassroots, you would know the kind of leaders you want, because they have a why. They know what it is in terms of structure, what to put in there and what would come out. So these things you just highlighted now, why you don't have this, why you don't have that. Caveat that we put in the right leadership person in there, not necessarily a political person, the right leadership person in there.
Yeah, yeah,
those things will be resolved on a level.
yeah.
You know?
I agree completely.
So I mean, during the conversation, you dropped a few nuggets there. You're going to run, you're going to do this, that. Let's go, or rather, let's end it with a why you want to do. Why do you want to do? I mean, on a personal level, we're in the diaspora here. We're in the diaspora. We are not. We don't really. I wouldn't say we don't care about politics, but we're intrigued about the Nigerian politics because we can see the why here. Why this guy should do this? Why is he not doing it? Why that guy is there when he shouldn't be there? You know, we can see it from both sides. But you're right here in front of us now, and you've given us a fantastic insight into what Nigeria can be, what Nigeria was. But now we want to know from you why you want it to be the way you want it to be. So
I'll tell you. I hope we have enough time.
Go for it. Yeah.
So I'll tell you why I first got into politics. Why I first became interested in politics. Sure. It was, I sort of like inferred. Growing up in Benin, we sort of, all of us, yourself inclusive, right. Solomon, and I'm sure David, we lived sheltered lives. We weren't exposed to the vagaries of Nigeria at the time.
Sure.
And we got good educations, and it opened up opportunities for most of us.
Right.
And I was driving in Gwarinpa. This was about 10 years ago.
Right.
Driving in Abuja. And there was a guy by the side of the road. He looked like he'd been knocked down. His clothes he was dirty, but he was clearly poor. But no one was stopping. And this is like a major road. No one was stopping. Just this guy lying by the side of the road, barely moving. So my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, I said, she's a doctor. So she says, he's moving, we should stop. Come on, they might want to rob us. It might be, it's not safe.
Right.
She said, you have to stop. So I stopped. And she got down, we got down, and she walked over to the man, and he was alive. He hadn't been knocked over. He had passed out or fainted from hunger.
Oh, wow.
So his clothes were dirty, he was unkempt, he was Hausa, she speaks Hausa. I met her in Zaria, she grew up in Zaria. And the guy said he hadn't eaten for like 3 days or something. So we went to there was a fast food store nearby. Went to a fast food store, we got some food, got some drinks. She came back to him. So she started feeding him on the side of the road. And of course, trust Nigeria. Now people started slowing down, and because I don't know what they thought was going on. Anyway, so I didn't have a lot of money on me. So we gave him his some money. I gave him all the money I had. She gave him all the money we had. And then so he sat up. He ate. He threw up. She fed him again. Anyway, so we left.
Take your time. Man. Yeah. Just take your time.
Anyway, forgive me. I haven't been asked this story in a long time. So,
well, we always begin with why, and it's amazing. You're giving us the why, and that is really key. So, take us
humanity.
Anyway, so we left him, and she started crying. So I said, "Why are you crying?" And she says, I think we gave him all together about 2,000 naira, but that's all we had on us. And she was like, how long will 2,000 naira last him? Because people are started gathering, and people saw that we gave him money. That this guy probably going to get robbed. And even if he's not robbed, how long will 2,000 naira last him before he's back on the side of the road, lying in a ditch, and people are
Walking past.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it didn't make sense to me that you could see that and not do something about it. It didn't make any sense to me.
Before you continue, a couple of weeks ago, we had a pastor, right? The pastor had a serious problem in Nigeria. The key problem that this guy had in Nigeria was an identical situation with what you were saying. And this guy literally broke down in front of us the same thing, addressing the same thing, where people are walking to church. They're going to their church, a magnificent building, completely filled with all kinds of gold and all kinds of stuff. But they're walking through lame people. They're walking through handicapped people. They're walking through people begging. They turn a blind eye to those things, but they are going to church. I just said that because you see the alignment there. That individual has decided he wants to do something about it, and that was the reason why. That was his why. I had no reason why you wanted to do this. This all came from a conversation, but you hit the nail on the head where politicians are not asking why. You spoke around to X amount of people. Nobody asked you why. So if somebody has asked you why at some point, you would have reiterated this story 101 times, and people will understand the need of the country. So here I am now asking you why, and it's amazing to see that the reaction you're giving is probably the same way you felt on the day this happened, which goes to show that nothing has really changed. But that's the change that we want to see. We don't want to see that kind of thing, but you've got to finish the story because
please, you've got to answer the why.
Yeah. There's no running away from
okay, so definitely I'll move away from that story. So that's why I got into politics. I felt it was almost criminal to not try and fix things, to not try and prevent people from literally starving to death in the capital. Now, I'm not talking about Zamfara or Borno, I'm talking about in the capital city. It didn't make any sense to me. At this time, like I said, we had an education, we had started building a home in the UK. So you see society working, and when you travel, obviously these guys are not more intelligent, they're not more hardworking, they're not more focused than you. Yep. And you ask yourself, like, if things can work here, why can't they work back home? And it goes back to what we're talking about, the leadership deficit. I think it's just because people don't understand why they do why do you contest for office? If you want to, it's very simple. Right. If you want to be a doctor, don't be a doctor. You're going to be saving lives. And I think politicians sort of like forget that. As politicians, you literally, everything you do is going to save a life or it's going to cost a life. And we sort of like, behind your nice homes and your bulletproof cars and your armed security guards, you sort of like forget that you were elected, the job you have is literally to save people's lives, to give them a better life, to stop them from dying, to provide, like I said, healthcare and education, and just the most basic of things for Nigeria. We're a third world country, and we're not talking about going to the moon now. We're just talking about the most basic of things. Why I chose to, so that's why I got into politics, and because I felt, for me personally, that thing resonated with me on a very, very fundamental level. Why I decided to run now, and particularly get into legislative office, is because, again, when you study politics and you study the democratic process, especially constitutional democracies, you realize that the president or the governor or society is only as strong or as vibrant as the laws that govern that society.
100%.
So, it might not be as glamorous as being an executive, but if you legislate for healthcare and for education and for these other things, the executive is then compelled to prioritize it. If it comes to budgeting and you are in a house committee on education, for instance, you can try to allocate larger amounts to things that really matter. And not, do we have a space agency in Nigeria, for God's sake?
Oh, yeah, I do. I do. I have a friend working there, but that's a chapter. I wouldn't bring that up. That's a completely different chapter.
It doesn't make any sense, so it's not as glamorous as the executive office. There's a lot of hard work, but I think if you sort of are able to understand what the issues are, and you're not going there, there for, like I said, for the fame and celebrity and whatever, and you really want to do the hard work, you can start, putting in laws that, these guys might not even realize what's happening, but, hang on, how come our budget is 20% to education? Because that's the law. If you start doing things like that, I think we start sort of like moving the hands of the clock a little bit closer towards some semblance of progress. That's what I run in my community. In Edo State, for instance, in our area particularly, we have issues with insecurity. State police is really important to me. I think states should be able to, police their territories. We don't have water. We have issues with water. I would love to legislate access to water for all communities. We don't have potable water outside the major cities. We barely have it in Abuja, for instance. The Romans had potable water.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
You see the gaps and the failures, and it makes me embarrassed and ashamed sometimes. I'm talking about the Romans. I'm not talking about 18th century. I'm talking about before Jesus. Societies have potable water, but we don't have today. And we all come from these communities, and we send money home if you're abroad, or we visit at Christmas, and we're happy driving on these untarred roads, and we're happy drinking swan water because we can't drink from the taps or from the wells or boreholes we dug. I hope I win. And I think if I have any fear is that, you get into office and you become like every other, politician, and you forget the why that got you into office in the first place. But I'm sure you guys will hold me to account.
It won't be us holding you to account. It would be the initiative that you've already started.
Yes.
Where you already have policies on ground, where you already have agreements to the grassroots who are going to vote you in.
Yep.
But on a different take, I must say this, Solomon, if begging your pardon.
No, sure.
When this conversation started,
right,
I didn't realize that there was going to be so much value that we would share and we would gain from the conversation. It has totally blown me away to know that there's still people like you who give Nigeria hope. Now, part of what TNN do is try and concentrate on those key aspects you talked about: education, healthcare, agriculture. Very important, and I'm so happy that those are some of the key focuses that you are also looking at. Diaspora have heard you. Your community will hear you. This is a lifetime thing. Like Solomon said, 5 years from now, somebody from your community will be listening to this, and they will understand why you are where you are, why you are fighting their battle. So for this value, I am most grateful.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks. I mean, it's what it is. It's value we're centered around. Nothing more, nothing less. Normally we say, can you just give us your time and converse with us? But intentionally, we know that as Nigerians, we have Nigerians like you, and more like you as well. That's where the hope is, that we can extract all this value and just roll it out. I personally want to really thank you for your time, the time you spent with us, the time you've shown to us. But the value that I want from you that can overarch this conversation is, can you just give back to us abroad, and us in Nigeria, in view of keeping that hope alive? what would be your final message, especially from the diaspora audience, to say, look, still keep that hope going? Because there's some of us who have we've hit the peak of our career and we've forgotten home because there's no need, right? There's some of us who are at the bottom back home. They've given up because there's no need. So how do we find that sweet spot for guys like who you've seen live 360, but you're still keeping that hope alive?
So I think really it's that you hear companies, you hear talk of companies saying that a company is too big to fail, for instance. I think I really think that Nigeria is too big to fail in the traditional sense. I think what will happen, worst case scenario, like I said, you find ourselves in this dystopian situation where you have parallel warlords and things moving about. But we can't. I don't think we can afford to allow that happen, simply because the solutions are in front of us. It's you, it's me, it's David, it's everyone listening. It's not, and again, it's not rocket science. It's not, I have seen, examples of where communities will come out and say, enough is enough, we want to change, and change will start to happen in those communities. It's easy to look at the news or read the news and, give up on Nigeria. But the alternate argument I make is that it's so much easier to refuse to give up because the solutions exist, because platforms like this and like others exist where you realize that you are not alone. It's not a hopeless case. And when these voices and people start coming together as a collective, you start to realize that, hang on, we actually are more than them, And once you get to that critical mass, once you build that critical mass of people who just want progress, that's when you start to reverse the decline. That's when you start to truly save Nigeria. So I would encourage everyone, especially the diaspora guys. I don't think we can afford to give up, because that's actually more difficult, I think. The mental strain of, divorcing yourself from Nigeria. It's a lot easier to just find like minds, like you guys are doing on TNN, who really want to make a difference, who are committed, whether you are here in Nigeria, whether you are abroad, who are just committed in fixing these problems. One politician at a time, one election at a time. And ultimately, I believe, maybe not by 2023, maybe not even by 2027, ultimately, I think we'll look back and we'll be surprised at how far forward we've come. If I have any last words, it would just be that we can't afford to lose hope.
Yeah, thank you, man. I'm going to take home one I've not heard that before. You see, we learn every day. One politician at a time, one election at a time. We can wrap it up. What we normally do, we just say our goodbyes, but we stop recording and then we have 5 minutes after this to just catch up, and make sure everything's all right. So I'll leave it to David to your final word. But for me,
before we go,
with profound gratitude, and this is from one Nigerian to another, and then obviously from a good friend to another. It's just gratitude to know you, to continue to engage with you, and looking forward to you amplifying your why.
Amen.
Ose, I want to appreciate you. I want to appreciate your missus, because she gave birth to a new thing in your life. I want to appreciate your family, because you come from a background of change. You come from a background of empathy. So I want to appreciate that as well. Most of all, I want to appreciate your time you're spending with us, your time that you will spend for your people. And I pray that your people value that time, and may it not be in vain. May everything that you do for your people progress your people and also progress you as well. Thank you very much.
Good stuff.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Forget the amen. All right, thanks everyone. I'll say obviously you're still here, so thank you very much, David. Yeah.